guess I've been to Mexico. Was that a f***ing problem? We could have had a good life. Fucking real good life. But you didn't want it, Ennis. So now we got Brokeback Mountain. That's all we got. I wish I knew how to quit you. Was that good? Was it? Okay, in all seriousness, I went to go see the 20th anniversary of Brokeback Mountain with my best friend. It was really good. It was my first time seeing it. One thing I noticed is how good the fashion was. I'm not talking about particularly this right here. This is my sun hat that I use for gardening, and I tried to make it into like a cowboy hat. Did it work?
Well, sort of, kind of.
I feel like I look like this guy. I was just making do. I don't have a cowboy hat, obviously. I was just very heavily inspired. Loved Anne Hathaway's little like cowgirl rodeo fits, particularly this one shirt. This one red plaid button up, and I think it had like upside down horseshoes on the boobs. All of the good button ups in that movie got me thinking that I have so many button ups that I've been saving for a rainy day for a thrift flip. Let me show you the contenders that we have. Number one, this was my boyfriend's button up. I saw this one Vivienne Westwood like corset top. It's not exactly a corset, which is great because I don't have experience with making a corset. I thought this print looked very similar, so I want to try to recreate that top. This is that one on. It's a little bit smaller than I thought it would fit, but I feel fine. Why am I saying that again? I'm like constantly saying that. I'm saying, oh, there'll be enough material. I'm almost like jinxing myself. But anyways, I think this is a great contender for the Vivienne Westwood top. My original inspiration for this shirt was just, I don't know, just like a fitted button up. Then I saw this shirt on Pinterest and I kind of need it now. The only problem is I don't have enough material to make all those ruffles. I Google lensed this shirt and I found it on eBay. An extra large. I would have a lot of fabric to work with. This is the listing. I'm gonna make an offer they can't refuse. Okay, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. First order of business, I'm gonna unpick every single part. Every seam you see here, I'm going to take apart. I feel so silly. When I was unpicking everything, I said, oh, I'll just take it all apart and then I'll see how much I have to work with. Once I was like looking more at the shirt, I thought, okay, it's going to be way easier to resize the waist if I keep the button placket, but I had already unpicked everything. I'll just add back a couple buttons. The buttons are on the wrong side. So I gotta unpick those now and sew them back on the right way. Yeah, so I didn't film this, but it took a while to get these buttons on correctly and in an even, straight pattern. So this was like 5 tries maybe to do that. Then once I had the buttons back on in the center, it was way easier to resize where I needed to take out in the waist. And then I just started contouring underwire of my bra so I could know where the boob part was gonna go in order to make the proper cuts and sort of like try to start fitting it. And then this was just me doing the side seam, the new side seam for the waist. I made the adjustments on this side and it's much, much better. I need to kind of mimic it on this side. I am planning on cutting this right here and then adding these back at like a little bit of a different angle. Then I can also cut the neckline and cut where I want the cap sleeves to go. I just pinned where I kind of want the peplum to hit, so I have it at this little angle here. I'm going to add seam allowance to that, of course, so I'm going to make it maybe like a 1/2 inch below that. I'm pretty happy with that where it hits. Once I made all those changes, I used the chalk again to map out where I wanted the sleeve to start. I'm super tempted to add more buttons. Right now I just have 3 and then I have a bunch of buttons in between and I have to add like 6 buttonholes. I tried to do automatic buttonholes on my machine and it just wasn't very successful. I had to do a bunch of different tests. What ended up working was just manually stopping at the beginning and end of the buttonhole.
It's a treat jamboree. Okay, come here. Come here. Whee! Oh my gosh, oh. So exciting, huh? Whee!
I took a week off of doing the projects to go stay at my sister's place to watch her baby Dolly while she was in Hawaii. Totally worth the break.
Bombastic side-eye.
Go, look in the camera.
No! Stop! It's not a toy! It's not a toy. She's trying to eat it. No!
I'm really loving laying here. I really don't want to go out. One more jump. Yay! Okay.
Not quite sure where the audio went for this because I'm clearly talking during it, but this was just me explaining that I need to add boob darts to shape the bust a little bit better because it was really loose by the armpit. So just pinned those out and then sewed them up. Then I gave those a really good press so they would be laying nice and flat. This is the shirt inside out. I'm going to be wearing the bra that I'm wearing right now with this shirt. So I just traced the lines of the bra with the chalk. I'm going to do maybe like a ½ inch to an inch above that for the cut so that there's seam allowance. Then I can add in the little triangle pieces that'll fold over and the collar back in. I'm very nervous to make the cut. I can't let it hold me back. I can't let my fears stop me. My perfectionism usually gets in the way of me actually like progressing with the project quickly. I have to like mull everything over before I make the cuts and, you know, like make final sort of decisions. It's a like $5 shirt, so whatever. I tried to make this example of a facing by just tracing the curvature of the front, then just made like a random triangle, like a random angle to see what it would kind of look like. And to be honest, I'm really not impressed with this. Like, it just looks like weak, like it's not even covering my boob. I want it to be like more over here, you know? I took a couple pieces, layered them together and made like a little triangle shape and pinned it together to see what it would look like. And you know what? That's gonna have to be good enough because I can't keep standing here all day and wondering what it would look like. Took that triangle of fabric, made a pattern, cut out 4 triangles from the fabric, then layered 2 pieces together, sewed the outside perimeter, leaving the top open so it would be easy to turn inside out. Then I stitched that to the shirt, matching up the angles, of course, of the angle above the boob to the angle of the triangle. And I was really happy with how that looked, so I decided to start working on my facing. For this, all I did was just lay the shirt as flat as possible on both sides of the neckline and trace out those lines, and then I was adding seam allowance as well. Now that I'm looking at the facing, the points really don't match up very well. I don't know what's going on. This one is like a little bit above this line, and then this one is below it. Oh my god. Oh, okay. I took the facing from the lower side, traced out where I needed to make the cut, made the cut, reattached the triangle to the new angle. Okay, better. This would just not be one of my videos if it didn't have some kind of unrelated side quest, so of course I had to include this. It's not really that unrelated because it is a recreating my Pinterest board video, and this lamp has been on my Pinterest board for quite some time. It's made by the brand Muley. Everything is like handmade, made to order. They're based in Austin and Philadelphia, I believe. Everything is just really, really incredible, really cool. This lamp is made of punched metal. The price reflects the handmade and made to order qualities as such. Unfortunately, I can't afford it. I'm taking a summer pottery class with my sister and a few friends, so I'm going to try to recreate this out of clay. I spent the first class trying to make the base, just rolling slabs, putting that together. My friend had to help me a lot. Then the next class, I spent punching all the holes. My teacher let me borrow this nice little drill tool, which was super helpful. Then disaster struck. Just kidding, it's actually fine. I bought an $18 putty to mix with my clay in order to patch up the cracks, and it worked pretty well. Time to fire it and hope for the best. Girl, get back to work. I honestly don't really have a good setup to show cutting fabric, so I just cut the facing off camera, sewed it up, put it on the serger to seal up the edges nicely, and then sewed that onto the top. Before turning over the facing and pressing it in place, I clipped the corners really well so I could have better access to the seam allowance in order to trim it. I understitched the facing and then I moved on to the sleeve. So I just cut off the bottom just to remove some excess. I knew I wanted a cap sleeve. I struggled for several days trying to design this cap sleeve on my own. I got a pattern, I made multiple mock-ups. Nothing really worked, but I decided to just do a rolled cuff, and then I took the button placket off of the end of the sleeve and put it onto the edge, securing it with a couple buttons. I think that looks cute. Then before I could do any of those design details on the sleeve, I had to cut the second sleeve out. So I just laid that across the other sleeve, trying to match up the pattern as best as I could, and just traced that out. Then I cut it out, folded each one right sides together, and sewed the side seams. Then I did an overlocking stitch, did a gathering stitch on the edge of the shoulder so that I could fit it into the armhole properly, pinned that all together and sewed that in. This is how the sleeve is looking. Stitch that, and then I can tuck this in after. That actually doesn't look very good. Yeah, okay, I'll just put it a little bit lower so that it's not like super high up on my shoulder. I opened the side up at the top of my hip to the bottom of my boob because I'm going to put in the loops to make like ties. I basically took just a scrap piece of fabric, added stay tape onto it, and then I measured out the loops and sewed them on super securely. I need to finish up these projects soon so that I can edit this video and put it out. I don't have enough time really to finish the Vivienne Westwood top and then to make the top with the stripes. So I'm going to break this video into two parts. This video, the one with the Vivienne Westwood top, I'll just include one more project. Found this piece on Pinterest from the brand Blondita. They are a smaller business. Don't want to be known as somebody who like steals other people's designs. If I'm just making it for myself and like giving them credit and saying like this is this person's design, I'm just recreating it for myself, is that still bad? Like, I don't know, what do you guys think? I am going to be recreating or attempting to recreate this top from Pinterest from the brand Blondita based in LA. This is an old LL Bean shirt. I've always been obsessed with like seersucker fabric. I like the little like bubbly type of texture on it. This type of material works really well with shearing. On the train today when I'm going to my ceramics class, I'm going to unpick this, and I'm getting really sick of the unpicking. I gathered a bunch of scraps of fabric, cut them on the diagonal to make this really long bias tape ribbon. This would have been much easier with an actual bias tape maker, but I didn't have one and I was just trying to be crafty. So I did the old pin on the ironing board method, and then I just folded it by hand as I put it through the machine, using the plate on my Spanish hem foot to run along the edge of the tie just to make sure I got a really consistent stitch. But then halfway through I ran out of thread, so I had to finish that the next day after I bought some more.
Finally finished. It's over 5 yards long. Probably more than I need, but that's a good thing. I could do something else with that.
I decided to cut the collar in half, and instead of having one large collar, I decided to make 2 lapels for either side of the bust, which actually makes it feel way more like the Vivienne Westwood reference photos because it has that really strong lapel above the little fold-over pieces on the bust, and I really prefer that look. It was also just very hard to try to rework the same collar onto the new angles that I created on this top. Once I was happy with the shape of those, I just stitched that down and then folded it over. Then I finally decided where I wanted to crop the end of the shirt, remove that excess, did a little press on the hem, and then folded that over, stitched it down. The last finishing touch was lacing the back with the long bias tape tie that we made. But you're gonna have to keep watching to see the result. Oh yeah, I decided to make a headband too. I hand stitched it and then used fusible denim tape to cover those stitches and then the bottom as well. I procrastinated making the lampshade for weeks because I could not find anything that was a similar shape in order to lay the clay on top of to mold it. I was damn near about to give up, but my instructor told me about tar paper molds. So this is roofing felt, apparently. I don't know. It was so thick and sturdy. I was wrestling with this thing, almost like Steve Irwin wrestling a crocodile. It was that hard to cut. I was sweating. But I finally got it into sort of a shape that I was happy with, laid the clay on top, and started smoothing it out. And then I just started drilling holes in it, hole after hole after hole. I honestly should give a trypophobia trigger warning before I started this segment. So sorry if this is disturbing to anybody, but I just cleaned up all of those holes. I shaved off the bumpy parts on the inside and then cleaned up the inside of the holes so that more light could shine through. The edge was a little bit wonky and uneven, so in order to even it out and smooth it, I used essentially a ped egg. Do you guys remember those? Did you guys have those? I mean, pretty useful. Then I carved my initials and put it on the firing shelf with a little prayer. I told you the unpicking doesn't stop. I didn't finish it on the train, so I had to keep going. Then I did some practice lines of shearing, and I just wasn't happy with any thread. It was like either too blue or the light colored ones were too light. You could just see everything. So I went to the fabric store, bought new thread, bought some ballpoint jersey needles for the shearing. Then I just started shearing away. And anyone who has tried this knows it's very time consuming because you have to hand wind every single bobbin. Not that this is really a tutorial because there are definitely better people to be giving tutorials, but shearing is essentially just sewing with elastic bobbin, so it's on the wrong side of the fabric and you have a regular thread on the top. Again, I'm not the best person to be explaining this. I really don't know what possessed me to do this, but I hand tied every single end of every single line. Why did I do that? I don't know. The piece from the original shirt that I just sheared, oh my god, this is a lot of S's, was the back of the shirt. Then I took one of the front pieces from the original shirt and turned it on its side, started gathering the edge to be the bottom of the bust piece. I don't have a dress form, so I just pinned it to the bottom of my bra so I could get the neckline situated and put in some boob darts. After that, I took it off and started going crazy with the cutting. The top is kind of asymmetrical. One side slopes all the way across the chest where the tie goes to the other side of the neck, if that makes sense, and one side just kind of like slopes up the armpit. So I had to try to recreate that shape onto this. Even though the front is asymmetrical, I wanted to make sure that both sides under the armpit were the same width, so I folded that over and just matched the curve and cut it. Then I sewed the bust darts that I had pinned out before when I was trying to do the shaping. Okay. At this point realized front bodice piece underneath the bust was not going to be wide enough. So I decided I was going to shear a different piece from the original shirt, then cut that in half and add it on either side of the bodice piece. Right now you may be asking why I didn't just sew the two pieces together like this. I don't know. I guess I thought it would be better with two symmetrical seams rather than just like one wonky seam off to the side. Yes? No? I don't know. Anyways, I cut that narrow piece in half and sewed a panel on either side of the bodice. Then I serged the edges. And this is when I realized I made a grave mistake. You see that? Yeah, a bunch of broken elastic threads. Up until this point, the project was going pretty well in my mind. This was the first big sort of snafu, and there are many more to come, just you wait. To try to fix this, I unpicked the unraveled side enough where I would be able to tie it to another string and just redid the stitch, starting at the same stopping point where I unpicked and then tying it off. At this point, I just wanted something that was going to feel like a win. There were two yoke pieces, so I just cut both of those and made them more of like a rectangular shape and then cut both of those in half. I wanted a long strip for the necktie, but I also wanted this to be turned inside out to have a nice finished edge. I took two of the pieces, sewed the ends together, repeated that on the other side, put those together right sides facing, and then stitched along the edge. On the edge I wanted the nice finish on, I did a triangle and then left the other end open so it would be easy to turn it inside out, and ironed it so it would be crispy. And I really didn't know what I was doing here, but I decided to make a lining. I needed a way to finish the edges of the bust piece and also sandwich the sheared bodice piece in between two layers of fabric so that it wasn't exposed and kind of like itching my boobs. Then I placed the bottom of the necktie at the top of the neck at an angle so that it would wrap around the neck nicely and stitch that down. After the tie was secure, I laid the lining piece on top and did a stitch right along the top edge. I understitched the lining so that it wouldn't roll forward to the shell fabric. At this point, I had the front panel completely done. I decided the best way to finish the top of the back would be to use some iron-on hem tape to secure the shearing in place and then stitch that with a zigzag stitch on top. Sorry, had to slow it down. That's hard for me to say. I basted the invisible zipper onto one of the sides and stitched it on. This was actually my realization that I grind my jaw. I had no idea. The more and more I'm looking at it, the worse I think it looks. Oh my god, the fit is atrocious, dude. Maybe I will add some elastic under the bust to kind of like gather it all a little bit more. Like I think that might look good. This is kind of hitting too high up here. I was expecting it to be like a little bit lower. I like how the tie wraps. I think that looks good. I think it looks good from the back. Probably going to get like a little snap to put here so that it secures it. And then I like how it like hangs in the back. I think that looks good. Of course, I need to do the hem on the bottom. I might add a few more lines of shearing and then kind of round out the bottom and then hike it up by the hip, round it back down towards the back because I did leave this little tail back here too. This is like binding my boobs in all the wrong areas. Too loose down here, really tight up here. I think it looks horrible. So I have to rework the darts, basically redo this whole top.
I offer you a nice egg in this trying time.
First things first, I unpicked and then redid the boob darts. I just fixed the darts on one side of the top. This is like the front. They look so much better. Now they end like on the side of my boob and they're more angled rather than being like straight down and going right over my boob. Once the darts were fixed, I decided to add a little panel of fabric on both sides of the bust, like under the armpit.
Good enough.
Because there was not enough gathering action once I put everything together. I thought that the bust piece was hitting a little bit too high above my boobs, going like too far up into my armpit, so I decided to take a little bit of that fabric out. Here's some cutting ASMR. Then I pretty much repeated all of the same steps I used to construct the garment the first time, but this time I added some thin elastic going across the bottom of the bust. It was hard for me to sew the elastic on from one end of the shirt to the other, so I started in the middle, working my way out both times.
Okay.
Had to do some more unpicking. Then I attached the gathered bust piece to the sheared bodice piece, making sure that the elastic was completely hidden between those two. I repeated the same steps with the elastic for the lining. I made sure to put it on the wrong side of the lining so that it would be on the inside of the shirt once I sandwiched the sheared piece in. Do you see what I'm saying? Sewed the side seams back together and it looked pretty nice, and there was still a little bit of stretch in the back, so I was happy. Oh my god, and then the zipper. And then I basted it in again to attach the zipper. Ugh. Fit is looking a lot better. However, now the zipper won't zip. And I'm getting absolutely pissed off. I'm removing the zipper. We're going no zipper. My sanity was severely waning at this point. I needed this to be done. I really did. So I sewed up the side seam. I don't give a shit if I break any more elastic threads.
Do I look like I give a fuck? Because I don't. I don't care. I don't care. I'm great.
I filled in the last couple lines at the bottom of the shirt with some more elastic thread to finish off the shearing, serged off the extra bits that were a little bit yucky, and then did the same method I did for the top of the back, which was using some iron-on hem tape that really helped keep the curved hem in place while I stitched down. I just did one line of shearing to maintain the elasticity. And now it's time for the reveal. I'm gonna be completely honest here. Buy the Blondita top. $65 is really seeming cheap to me now after all the trials and tribulations I went through to make this. Here's the cost breakdown for the materials list, including the invisible zipper that I didn't end up putting in there, for a grand total of $15.96. The mic that I'm holding the entire time in this clip didn't pick up any audio, so here I am doing a voiceover to show you the necktie thing that I made. This was just extra from the waist tie. I just cut it down. Maybe it would be cute if I tied it around my neck, but then I was kind of worried, like, is it giving Colonel Sanders? And this price is just a guesstimate because I had a really hard time pinpointing exactly how much one of these tops cost. So it's expensive, let's just say that. I barely needed any materials to complete this, so it ended up being probably my cheapest thrift flip ever at $284. Crazy. That's all. See you in my next video. Mwah!